Take a look at that. Chicago is lighting up green for Earth Day. Way to go, Chicago. Happy Earth Day, everyone. On this Earth Day, let's celebrate the progress we've achieved, and let's also recognize the challenges we face with climate change and other issues. We've come a long way. We still have a long ways to go when it comes to better protecting the environment for people, our communities, and our planet. We'll be joined today by two U.S. senators who are working to carry forward this environmental progress. Senators Tammy Duckworth and Dick Durbin will be joining us to talk about what they are doing to help advance environmental progress and the excitement we all feel about the Biden administration stepping up with its all-in approach on climate change solutions. We'll also be talking with Congressman Chuy Garcia about how Chicago and Illinois are primed to benefit from the proposed transportation infrastructure legislation. Then Governor J.B. Pritzker and Mayor Lori Lightfoot will join us to talk about the ways in which states and cities can step up with climate actions and environmental justice solutions. We'll hear from some of our ELPC colleagues, environmental groups, conservation groups, community groups that are partners with achieving progress in the Chicago area. And then a special treat. The ELPC staff has penned a poem, and I promise you'll smile. First up, two U.S. senators. I recently had the opportunity to talk with Senator Duckworth and Senator Durbin about their work to advance environmental legislation. As the Biden administration makes this a key priority, there's a real opportunity now for environmental progress to move forward. Here's a look at my conversation with Senator Tammy Duckworth, who's serving as chair of the Subcommittee for Fisheries, Water, and Wildlife of the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee. And Senator Duckworth also serves as the co-chair of the Environmental Justice Caucus. Happy Earth Day, and thank you, Senator, for joining us today to celebrate Earth Day and for all that you do to protect the environment. Let's talk about safe, clean water. I know you care a lot about your Drinking Water and Wastewater Infrastructure Act. It's passed out of Senate committee with bipartisan support. What does it do, and what's going to happen when it gets to the Senate floor?
Well, it passed out unanimously, so I'm thrilled because all the Republicans voted for it. What's important to me in this is the amount of federal investments that it authorizes to help states and communities make real significant changes to their wastewater and drinking water systems. It also focuses on making sure that that federal investment is equitably distributed for families, no matter what their zip code is, their income level, the color of their skin. I want to make sure that we have environmental justice in whatever we do, especially when it comes to fixing our drinking water supply. Howard, the federal government's share of spending for safe drinking water fell in the 40-year period from 1977 to 2017. From 63% we spent in federal dollars, federal shares for that, to just 9% of the money spent for water, for clean water in 2017. So the whole goal is to bump this number up and make sure that we have a priority for drinking water infrastructure in particular.
Can you talk a little bit about lead service pipes? Chicago and Illinois have more lead service pipes than any place in the country, and I know your legislation gets at that. What does it do?
Well, we have exponentially more than the number 2 state or city in the nation. We have 23% of our entire nation's lead service pipelines are in Illinois. Most of it is in Chicago, although it's not all in Chicago. I mean, Galesburg has tested positive for lead, so we know that it's out in rural communities as well. There are several provisions in the bill that can assist in lead line replacement, testing, and technical assistance. So that's the 3 main things, which is replacement, testing, and technical assistance. For example, it reauthorizes the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, usually known as the Drinking Water SRF. There's $14.65 billion in that reauthorization. It's going to really provide critical resources to states to upgrade the aging infrastructure. That will include replacement and lead remediation. It also reauthorizes, and I think this is really critically important, the EPA's lead reduction grant program. And the reason the grant program is important is when you go to poor communities and rural communities, these communities don't have the tax base to come up with the money to do this. So we have to have an outright grant program, and we increase that program's authorization to $100 million a year. That can be used for lead reduction projects, including the replacement of publicly owned lead service lines testing and planning as well. And then there is, and I'm very proud of this one, there's funding in it for voluntary school and childcare facilities lead testing grant program. We've not been testing. We know that our schools, especially our public schools, have a lot of lead in the system. We just haven't tested for it. Just because you don't test for it doesn't mean it's not there. Our kids are still exposed to lead in their drinking fountain. So we need to make sure that we provide the funds and the technical assistance for that testing program. So those are just some of the things that are in this bill. It's very wide ranging, and it will cover everything from lead on tribal lands to major municipalities like Chicago to small rural communities like El Paso, Illinois, for example.
President Biden has a big infrastructure plan, and some say that your water treatment bill will be, if you will, the test case for whether there are Republican votes in the Senate to pass an infrastructure bill. What do you think with regard to transportation infrastructure, water infrastructure? Will there be bipartisan support, or will Democrats do this with 50 votes through budget reconciliation?
What I would like is for there to be Republican support and we get over 60 votes. I hope we get more than that. But if we have to, then I would support moving it through budget reconciliation. It's that important. We can't wait on this. Our nation's infrastructure is rated as a D- by the American Society of Civil Engineers. And that's just not safe for people crossing bridges. In Illinois, we have over 2,000 bridges that are deemed structurally deficient, but we're still using them. So that's just not safe to begin with. But economically, we want to compete with other nations around the world. How do you compete with Japan or Germany or South Korea when they have world-class infrastructure they've been investing in, and we've got D- infrastructure? So, and we need broadband. If anything, 2020 shows us that we desperately need to bring broadband infrastructure throughout the nation. That said, in this infrastructure plan is $45 billion for the replacement of 100% of the lead service lines in the nation. It's very ambitious. I hope that can gain bipartisan support. I would do my absolute best to get it across the finish line. And that's where I say if we have to do it on the 50 vote, then 51 vote with Kamala Harris, and that's what we'll do. But I hope that we can get Republicans on this. It's why the water bill that we just passed on the committee was unanimous, because we included things in there for rural communities farms that operate on wells and the like, so that we can help those folks as well. That's how we got more Republican support. And so I'll do my best to make it bipartisan, but we'll do it on a 51 vote because it's that critically important to the nation.
2 years ago on Earth Day, you and Senator Booker and Senator Carper set up the Environmental Justice Caucus. And I know you have legislation, the Environmental Justice for All Act. What does it do, and how does it make a difference, in the day-to-day lives for people in Illinois and Chicago?
Yeah, so it has many aspects to it, but the basic philosophy on the Environmental Justice for All Act is to bring access to a clean environment for those communities that are disproportionately negatively impacted up to parity, and then we invest in environmental, good clean environment for everybody on up. So it recognizes that there are communities in this country, largely communities of color, that have borne the brunt of our industrialization, for example. So this is where we put our most polluting industry. You think of Chicago, you think of the South Side, where we did everything from put pet coke into the air to ethylene oxide to manganese as we're recycling automobile parts, right? Those communities need to be brought up to parity, and then we need to protect the environment for everybody and invest in a clean environment moving forwards. Similarly, on the South Side of Chicago, the beaches on the South Side of Chicago are shut down an average of 39 days a year, whereas if you go north, it's only 1 day a year. So those communities don't have access to the parks and the recreational resources that should be available to them. What I see in this Environmental Justice for All Act is several things going on at once. It does several things. One part of the bill explicitly addresses permitting decisions under the Clean Water and Clean Air Act, which passed in the Clinton administration. That bill, that act does not require the cumulative effects of an activity when you're permitting, so that when somebody was applying for a permit on the South Side of Chicago, to recycle automobile parts that might put manganese into the air. The city didn't have to look at the cumulative effects of the pet coke permit that was given 50 years ago. Well, now this bill will say, hey, we have to look at the cumulative effects of these permits on a particular community. And that'll help with these communities that have been disproportionately affected. It will also look at establishing a federal energy transition economic development assistance fund. This is where we're going to support communities and workers as they transition away from fossil fuel dependent economies to new jobs that are not fossil fuel dependent. There are so many things in this bill. We're working hard to move it, but we're trying to find every opportunity that we can in the legislative vehicle to continue to push this bill forward as a whole, but also components within it. And remember that environmental justice is not just about, it's critically about Black and Brown communities, but think of rural communities, so I can go to my Republican colleagues and say, hey, you have communities where there are huge pig waste ponds, that is contaminating the environment. Let's help those communities that are farming communities as well deal with the environmental pollutants from that particular economic activity.
Let's turn, if we could, to Asian carp. We all know it would be an ecological and an economic disaster if Asian carp got into Lake Michigan and the Great Lakes in any significant number. You're also now the chair of a subcommittee that oversees the Army Corps of Engineers. What can you do to make sure that the Army Corps of Engineers is both thoughtful and effective, but also gets going and moves faster on keeping Asian carp out of Lake Michigan, out of the Great Lakes?
Well, just by being the chairwoman of the committee, I get their attention. So I've already met with every commander of the Army Corps of Engineers district that affects anywhere in Illinois and in the Midwest. So I've already met with them all. I hope that the Brandon Road Initiative is on a promising path. One of the things that I have done is I included language in both of the last two WRDA reauthorizations to reduce the non-federal cost shares. That means that the state of Illinois will pay less into the project, and that will allow it to move forward in a way that will save Illinois taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars, and it will actually make it complete much faster because then it's largely federal dollars, which I can then help push through, and it's not going to be dependent on the local communities coming up with dollars for that. So I think that just by changing the cost share formula, we've moved that project ahead significantly. And then in January of this year, and you know this, Howard, the governors of Illinois and Michigan agreed to work jointly to protect the Great Lakes and the Asian carp. And so Governor Whitmer and Governor Pritzker made arrangements between our respective departments of natural resources that will allow Illinois to use up to $8 million to support the pre-construction engineering phase of the Brandon Road project.
Thank you for everything that you are doing to protect the environment, for being one of our environmental leaders. And thank you for all that you will be doing. Thanks for joining us today. Happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day, Howard. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Tammy Duckworth. And I'm pleased to introduce Illinois Senior Senator Dick Durbin. Senator Durbin is a longtime effective leader on the environment. He's the #2 Democrat in the Senate, now serves as chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and is a longtime member of the Senate Appropriations Committee and Agriculture. He's been making a difference for a long time. We'll be hearing this video message from Senator Durbin.
Over 50 years ago, in January 1970, an ad appeared in the New York Times calling on readers to participate in what they called a Day of Environmental Action on April 22nd. It was the beginning of a new American and global tradition that we commemorate every year, Earth Day. In the more than 50 years since we've celebrated the first Earth Day, the movement to save our planet has made tremendous progress. Today, renewable energy sources, wind, solar, geothermal, are the fastest growing sources of energy in America. We're headed in the right direction. But there's more we have to do to stop the threat of climate change and save our planet for our kids and grandkids. Fortunately, we now have a president who recognizes the seriousness of this challenge. He understands that combating climate change isn't just about saving our planet, it's about a new economy, an energy economy that creates sustainable, good-paying jobs for millions of Americans and people in Illinois. That's why I'm proud to support the American Jobs Plan of President Biden. It's an historic, once-in-a-generation investment in our nation's future, one that will rebuild roads and bridges, modernize the electrical grid, power American homes and businesses with cheaper, cleaner energy. The American Jobs Plan is proof that our economic growth doesn't need to come at the cost of our planet's habitability. Imagine how much healthier our kids and communities would be under the plan's proposal to eliminate all lead pipes and service lines in our drinking water systems. Haven't we learned from Flint, Michigan, how important it is to have safe drinking water? Earth Day is a testament to what humankind can achieve when we come together as a global community to protect Mother Earth, the only planet we've got. I hope you'll join me in supporting the President's plan, taking a small step every day to live more sustainably. Happy Earth Day.
Thank you, Senator Durbin, for all you're doing in Washington to accelerate climate solutions and make environmental progress happen in our nation's capital.
Now I'm pleased to share a conversation I had with Congressman Chuy Garcia about what the transportation infrastructure legislation means for Chicago and the youthful energy driving Earth Day. Congressman Garcia, we've known each other since that political watershed moment when Harold Washington was elected as Chicago's mayor in the early 1980s.
Sure.
How has your thinking changed on environmental issues? And how do you see environmental and climate change issues playing out differently today since the 1980s when Mayor Washington was in office?
Well, to say that there's been a sea change in terms of awareness, in terms of energy, in terms of the urgency to address environmental issues, especially with all of the threats of climate change and the urgent need for us to act as leaders on the world stage, and certainly as a country that's seen as a leader globally. The stakes couldn't be higher. The urgency could not be greater. So that's sort of on the big picture. On the local picture, it's really amazing how environmental issues and who champions them, who fights for them, has changed for the better. 35 years ago, most environmental advocates and champions were largely white, middle class, people who were seen as do-gooders. We've come a long way, thanks to them, of course, but also thanks to the growing urgency for all of us to act. I'm especially pleased, Howard, to see young people taking up the mantle, young people of all races and ethnicity, geographies, you name it, it's happening. And that feels really good. It gives me confidence that we're going to be in good hands. We are in good hands, but that they will produce the outcomes necessary to build healthier communities with equity built in them. They are a guiding light in the times that we live in. You see them fighting for neighborhoods to be cleaner, to have better transportation system, different modes of transportation, skateboards, bicycles, walking paths, electric vehicles, on and on. And then you see them challenging decision makers, including us here in Washington, to take bold action on climate change.
The energy of young people is great, but that's not an excuse for those of us who are over 50 to be off the hook. Talk a little bit, if you would, about transportation. Transportation sector is now number one in terms of the carbon problem. The transportation infrastructure legislation is being viewed as a once-in-a-generation opportunity to really make a difference for the environment and for our infrastructure. How does this affect Illinois? How does it affect Chicago? How does it make a difference in terms of mobility for everybody?
We have a unique opportunity right now because Congress is working on not one, but two major infrastructure bills. The Surface Transportation Reauthorization Bill, which will do every 5 years, and President Biden's $2.5 trillion American Jobs Plan, also known as the Infrastructure Bill, where a majority of the money will go to transportation and infrastructure projects. Chicago is the transportation hub of America. So anytime we have an opportunity to upgrade and invest in our infrastructure, we have to take it.
Congressman Garcia, you're leading the Transportation Future Caucus, and that reflects a lot of what you've been talking about today. How does that lead everyone to think differently about mobility for all?
I think we need to develop a holistic approach and a look at our entire transportation system in order to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Currently, 80% of federal transportation funding goes to highways and only 20% goes to public transit. That's a broken formula. What we need to do is to start treating public transit for what it is, a critical lifeline for working class people and for everyone. The surface transportation reauthorization is a great opportunity to start addressing these issues.
Congressman, President Biden's American Jobs Plan really does reflect the values you're talking about, namely equity.
So the American Jobs Plan has the potential to reverse discriminatory patterns in a few ways. It will increase funding for public transportation, which, as we've discussed, is a lifeline for working class and minority communities. Historic underinvestment in public transportation has disproportionately impacted communities of color who rely on public transportation at a higher rate than white communities. President Biden's bill invests those $20 billion in a new program to reinvest in neighborhoods previously harmed by these planning decisions.
We've been talking about transportation, but let's also talk about your new role as Vice Chair of the House Natural Resources Committee. Now, that position is usually someone from California or Colorado or Montana, maybe the East Coast. It's unusual for a Chicago urban Democrat to be vice chair of the Natural Resources Committee. What are you going to look to do from that new position? How are you going to get things done? What's important?
So it is unusual, and that's a good thing, but that's exactly why it can have an impact. Working class and urban communities like mine are even more affected by issues of environmental racism and injustice, but they don't often have a seat at the table where consequential decisions about those issues are made. Additionally, the committee oversees the Great Lakes, one of our nation's most precious resources, which is especially important to my district, to all of the northeast region of Illinois. This Congress, I hope that we get to address the problems plaguing the Great Lakes and the surrounding region, including the impacts of climate change, crumbling water infrastructure, invasive species, and more.
What a great opportunity. You're in a great position to do important things for Chicago, our region, and our country. Thank you for everything you're doing, Congressman, to protect the environment. And thank you for joining us today on Earth Day.
We'll also be joined today by some of our local environmental, community, and conservation group colleagues who are working around Chicago to make sure that we have healthier, clean air, safe, clean drinking water, and healthy communities without toxic threats for everyone.
I'm Michelle Carr, Illinois Director for the Nature Conservancy. It's hard not to feel hopeful this time of year. Birds are singing and nature is just bursting into bloom. But this Earth Day, I'm most hopeful and excited for the unifying power of nature. Whether you live in the country or the city, whether you're left or right, old or young, we all know the power of nature to bring our sustenance, our good health, and just joy. Thank you.
I'm Naomi Davis, founder of Blacks in Green, and I come from white gloves and mud. Proud granddaughter of Mississippi sharecroppers who, like 7 million others, bid bittersweet goodbye to home and headed up south for freedom and economic opportunity. We're the authors of The Sustainable Square Mile, where every household can walk to work, walk to shop, walk to learn, walk to play. And this Earth Day, we wish environmental justice for everywhere on our pale blue dot. Stay with us now. We're big because you are.
Hi everybody, I am more hopeful this Earth Day than I have been in years. First, I know that a healthy Great Lakes and clean water are still something that so many people across the Midwest can agree on all together. And second, I know how many of us have taken a moment or moments this year just to step back and listen to each other, our neighbors and our friends, and learn what's needed to make sure that our communities and our water are safe, clean, and healthy for all of us. Happy Earth Day to everybody.
Hi, I'm Juanita Irizarry, Executive Director of Friends of the Parks. As we prepare for the 37th Annual Earth Day celebration and cleanup that Friends of the Parks coordinates across the city, according to this year's theme of Hope Springs Eternal, we are so excited to convene Chicagoans to get out into parks and nature, or maybe even just to stay in their backyard to do a little bit of cleanup, pick up debris, do some gardening, and love on Mother Earth as part of our resilience as we emerge together from this challenging year. Happy Earth Day.
At Respiratory Health Association, our vision is healthy lungs and clean air for all. On this Earth Day 2021, we are hopeful that there's increased attention being paid to the quality of the air we all breathe. That means less pollution from vehicles, less pollution from coal-fired power plants, and passage of the Clean Energy Jobs Act here in Illinois. We breathe every day. Let's make every day Earth Day.
I'm Jen Walling, Executive Director of the Illinois Environmental Council, and I want to wish everyone in Illinois a very happy Earth Day. I'm so thankful to all of the environmentalists in Illinois, especially those that have helped with state legislation. I'm here in Springfield with our state capitol behind us, and I'm hopeful that this year we're going to address climate change through the Clean Energy Jobs Act, address dangerous and toxic lead service lines, and change permitting to help our environmental justice communities, all right here in this building. Thank you. Happy Earth Day.
Hey, a special thanks to our environmental and community partners with a lot of respect for the important work they're doing and effective work they're doing for Chicago. Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot is now joining us to talk a little bit more about the city's climate goals and the important work on environmental justice. Let's check it out.
Hello, everyone. I'm Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, and it's my honor to be part of the Environmental Law and Policy Center's virtual Earth Day event. Here in Chicago, solving environmental problems is a top priority. Since I became mayor, I've been working to ensure all residents have clean air to breathe and safe water to drink, no matter their race, economic status, or zip code. In our city's latest step to accomplish this mission, we passed an ordinance that will improve Chicago's air quality by requiring more intensive review before any potential polluting business can build new facilities. Because no resident, no matter what neighborhood they live in, should ever be forced to live with the fear that the very air they breathe isn't safe. Thanks to efforts like these, we will be that much closer to becoming a fully sustainable and environmentally equitable Chicago. So thank you, enjoy today's event, and please remember to be safe.
Thank you, Mayor Lori Lightfoot. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker has vowed that Illinois should be a clean energy leader. Here are his comments about how Illinois and other states can step up and lead on climate action.
Thank you, Governor, for joining us to celebrate Earth Day. Let's talk about climate change. Former President Trump ignored climate change, ignored sound science, and let a bad climate change problem get worse. Now President Biden is all in with the federal government for climate change solutions. How is Illinois going to step up as a Midwest climate change solutions leader? How are you going to leverage the federal government support to really make a difference for climate change solutions in ways that are good for jobs, good for economic growth, and good for the environment here in Illinois and the Midwest?
Well, thanks so much, Howard. And let me begin by saying, thank God we have an administration that actually cares about climate change, somebody that we can partner with. And I was very proud, while President Trump was president, to have Illinois join the U.S. Climate Alliance, to commit itself to the right kinds of principles toward changing the way states are operating and hopefully getting the whole United States moving in the right direction. So now that we've got the right federal leadership, we can make some significant strides. And I guess I'd start by just pointing out that, one example of what the federal government is now doing that it wasn't doing before is helping us to make the kinds of investments in EV infrastructure and in the grid, and especially with a focus on something I'm very committed to, which is 100% clean energy by 2050 for the state of Illinois. And I put out 8 principles for a clean and renewable Illinois economy, and I intend to stick to those. We're focused on that in the energy bill that's coming up before the legislature in not too long from now.
So let's talk about infrastructure, electric vehicles, and renewable energy. On infrastructure, you in Illinois beat the federal government to the punch. Illinois passed transportation infrastructure legislation 2 years ago, and among other things, it increased passenger rail service to Rockford and Quad Cities. How do you see the federal infrastructure opportunity with President Biden leading the way as a chance to really accelerate high-speed rail in the Midwest, Chicago to St. Louis, and the Chicago hub to Midwest high-speed rail network, in which Illinois is clearly the biggest winner?
Well, you're right to point out that we beat the federal government to it, a $45 billion capital bill. Some people have said, well, gee, didn't you do it too early? The federal government's coming now with a lot of money. But as you know, for most of what we need to do in infrastructure, there's a state match to the federal money. So we're all ready to go. Most states are not.
Governor, you talked about electric vehicles. Let's talk about electric school buses. Good for kids' health, less diesel pollution, and provides cleaner air for everybody. President Biden's plan really steps up federal funding for electric school buses. You and the Illinois EPA have been working together with us and many others to advance electric school buses in Illinois. A few were rolled off a couple weeks ago in Pekin. What are you going to do to seize this federal opportunity to really work together to accelerate electric school buses across the state of Illinois?
So there are kind of two aspects of that. Let me try and address both quickly. One is, of course, what we're going to invest in the acquisition of electric school buses and the transition to electric school buses. And of course, we've got the money that's left in our VW funds, but that's not enough. We need to pursue legislation as we are now to build out a network of charging stations, to allow schools to access more dollars so that they can make the conversion on their own. And of course, there are companies in Illinois that are already working on making that transition within their bus companies. But the second part of this, which is vital, is I want Illinois to be a center, a hub for electric vehicle manufacturing. Not just, so we first, manufacturing the vehicles themselves, but also, when you can attract a manufacturer, you're going to attract a whole bunch of their suppliers. And so I've been working on that personally. I've been on the phone with a number of folks in the electric bus and electric truck arena and, trying to get them to move to Illinois. I think we're making real progress. And then, of course, talking to the parts makers who, even if we don't have bus manufacturers here, electric bus manufacturers here, Illinois is the best place from a transportation, distribution, logistics perspective to put your factory. And so I've been making that case directly to CEOs and to board members of companies across the nation. And I think we're going to see some real progress coming up over the next 12 months.
Let's discuss clean energy. It's great to talk to a governor who's been singing the praises of renewable energy for many years. But as you know, solar energy is stuck in Illinois. The 2016 legislation has some quirks in it, funding has ended, and we're seeing solar projects stalled across the state. What are you going to do to accelerate clean, renewable solar energy to capture the installation and the jobs here in Illinois? Because as we all know, there are a lot of states competing with us for solar energy leadership.
I think we haven't quite got it right yet. As you know, we've got major energy legislation that's being worked on right now in the last 5-6 weeks of session here that we're deep into. The RPS budget has run out, and that's very challenging and has been. I was hoping that we might see some movement in the lame duck session, but it was so brief, and COVID was still very, very hot in Illinois. And so, that was a challenge. But here we are. We need to focus on dedicating real funding to the procurement of renewable energy. We've got to make sure this is an integral part of the energy bill that we're getting put together right now. Wind and solar resources in this state are vital for development right now. So I'm working with all the stakeholders, that have an interest in this. Some that are pulling in a different direction. But we've got to work with all of them. We've got to pull them all together and make sure, we live in a moment in Illinois where I think it is unique that because of some of the challenges that our, historical electric providers have had, I think we have an even reasonable playing field for doing what we really have needed to do, which is vault ourselves forward. So I can't tell you exactly what the bill is going to look like in the end, but I can tell you that renewable energy is at the very top of the list of accomplishments that we need to make in this bill.
Governor, let's talk about clean government. The Commonwealth Edison and Exelon bribery scandal makes clear that if we want clean energy in Illinois, we need to have clean government. What types of utility reforms are you going to propose so that we begin to clean up the utility political corruption in Illinois?
Well, you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, ratepayers are tired of the status quo, tired of, the behind closed doors deal making that's improper, that, we need to bring the sunshine in and real transparency. And that's why in the principles that I put out for clean energy and for this new energy bill, I've made, I put at the top of the list of important reforms that need to be made, reforms in the ethics principles that companies need to follow. That's got to be a central focus of the legislation. I think transparency is critically important. That's what's been missing, and that's why we haven't been able to make some of the progress that I think we can now make.
Governor, thank you for all you're doing for the state, for the people, and for the environment. Thank you for joining us.
Many thanks to our political leaders and colleagues who joined us today on Earth Day. A special shout out to ELPC staff who are working hard in a dedicated and effective way through these very challenging times to advance environmental progress. And now a treat. In honor of Earth Day, ELPC Media Relations Specialist Paul Daling penned a special poem that we'd like to share with you today to celebrate Earth Day.
If on Earth Day you think of slogans and rallies, we must disabuse you of this common fallacy.
Signs, chants, and cheers are valuable, true.
They remind us why we do the work that we do.
Earth Day focuses, centers, and recommits us to our mission.
But the glamour and glitz don't follow us down to our work in the trenches.
Where we slug through the mire.
Where the muck and the stench is.
Earth Day is a day we preach for the planet.
We cheer to the public. We will not can it.
We're firebrands today, but come April 23rd, we'll be back at what we do best.
I mean, frankly, we're nerds.
We're nerds.
We're nerds.
In Congress and State House.
Or Commerce Commission.
We'll show you the value of wonk to the mission.
In each word that each lawyer or advocate speaks.
You can't save the earth if you don't have the geeks.
I wage war on coal ash.
I fight for air quality.
I promote our platform in Illinois' polity.
I secure grants and funding, without which we'd fail.
We wouldn't get clean cars or advance high-speed rail.
I monitor the air and then map the data.
I ensure that utilities are fairly pro rata.
I fight so our waters were able to fish again.
I run Minnesota.
And I manage Michigan.
We're wonky.
We're nerdy.
We're deep in the weeds.
But science-based fact is what advocacy needs.
Board, back, and court, we're in all these rooms.
Fighting for solar and against algal blooms.
We're in Iowa.
Wisconsin.
Ohio.
DC.
From farmland to city, we fight diligently.
We hope on this Earth Day, these doggerel words have shown you the need for air, water, and nerds.
I hope we've convinced you. But, well, we'll see.
Happy Earth Day to all from ELPC.
Happy Earth Day!
Happy Earth Day!
Happy Earth Day!
Happy Earth Day!
Happy
Happy Earth Day, everyone. Let's work together to make the world a better place today on Earth Day and every day going forward.